Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here, got another Alestral's deck profile for you. So this time we're coming at you with Solar, as we are unleashing the power of the sun. Haven't tried out Solar yet, so I wanted to build a pretty dedicated Solar deck to see how I like the strategy. I've heard a lot of people say the strategy feels a little bit unrefined, like it's still missing some tools to make it a little bit stronger, but I definitely still think that there is at the very least a solid base for Solar here. So we're going to be diving in and taking a look at this build here. Let's just go on into it. Yeah, it's funny, I felt like I had something like a blurb to say in the beginning, but no, I don't, so let's go on into it. First up, we got 2 copies of Lustragon. These are our only 2 Spirit or higher, and honestly, you really don't even need the second copy. The thing about Solar, the nice benefit that it has over a lot of other Spirit types is that its cards are very searchable. Between Exaltus and Apollo, it's very, very easy to find Solar cards. So you often don't need to play as many copies of Solar cards as you might for other decks. Now, I played 2 Lustragon. Like, even going into building this deck, I knew I probably only needed the 1 copy. There's an argument to playing like a Celestleo instead of like a second Lustragon here, but I mainly played 2 here because I just wanted to try it out. Funnily enough, I actually didn't get to summon Lustragon in any of my games here, but I do still think it's a very, very solid card. It's definitely a good benefit for, like, a good payoff for playing Solar, so you definitely do want to play at least 1. Again, I actually don't think the second copy is not necessary, though. Again, not because I think the card is bad, but just because it's so searchable, right? We do want to be playing 3 copies of this Solar, though, and that is going to be Lumaru. So Lumaru is a 5/2 that says when Lumaru destroys an Celestial by battle, your opponent sends the top 3 cards of their deck to the graveyard. But most importantly, this has an attack stat of 5, which, as you probably know, 5 is a pretty important number in Celestrals. It is definitely the attack stat to beat, right? So we got 3 copies of that just because we definitely always want to open it. It's a very, very good turn 1 play, for example. I'm also playing 3 copies of Exaltus, which you don't have to. This is another card where I think you could very easily get away with playing like 2 copies, but Exaltus is quite good. It's a 3/2 that says you can Nexus up to 2 Solar. When you do, you can search your deck for an Ethereal, I think that is. Let me actually check my rulebook here, because I don't remember all of the creature types off the top of my head. I will say I do kind of wish that they actually listed out the type by name. Yeah, it is Ethereal, okay. Instead of just doing the symbol, but I mean, it still gets the point across. So, searches out any ethereal Celestial. Lumaru is not ethereal, but Lustragon is, and I think with the exception of one other Celestial, I'll point out, literally every other Celestial in this deck is ethereal. So, Lumaru, it's fine if we can't search it, because we can search it off other cards, and we're playing 3 anyway. And the other card isn't like the most important to search anyway. So, but Exaltus, the main drawback of this card is its stat line is pretty low, but I think to Nexus and then also be able to search is quite good. So again, you could get away with 2. I can actually see only playing 2, because I did have a game that was kind of clogged up in my hand, but yeah, for being such a good search, I wanted to try it at 3. Next up, we have 2 copies of Corvishine. And as you can see, my copies here have the very nice blue ink bleed misprint. But yeah, the thing about Corvishine, funnily enough, Corvishine is like kind of a more balanced Astrabbit. It's a 2/4 that says when it receives 1 or more Solar, you can foretell cards equal to the number of spirits and chains to get +1. Then you may draw a card and then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. So this is kind of like Astrabbit number 4 and 5, but it's in theme and slightly worse, but really more balanced because Astrabbit's already an insanely good card. Yeah, I mean, it's just a very, very solid search tool in general. If stuff wasn't so searchable, you'd probably play 3 of this, but again, this is ethereal, so. Dratora is another Solar card. This is literally just Dratagua for the Solar deck, but it's actually better. Well, kind of better. It's when you Nexus, you can return up to 2 from the Spirit deck. I actually, now that I think about this, I think I misplayed this in at least one of the games you're going to see coming up. I think I played this as if it were just Dratagua. So, oops. My bad on that, but still, I think a very, very good card for healing. Another very good card for healing, and this is going to be our one other Celestial besides Lumaru that is not ethereal. That's going to be Campfell. So you might be wondering why we're playing Camphel if we're not playing a dedicated Ferrogeist deck. But that's because I think Camphel already has an extremely good effect, even if you're not playing it in Ferrogeist. Camphel is a 1 Solar Spirit 3/4 that says when you send this Camphel or it is destroyed, you can return 3 spirits in any combination of Solar or Lunar from your Underworld to your Spirit deck. So like I said before, it's another great way to heal, and it also works when it's ascended or destroyed. So once this sticks, unless your opponent's like bouncing it back to your hand, you're always going to heal, right, whenever this ends up leaving the field. So very, very good stuff there. Our last Solars is just 1 single copy of P-Gleam. When it receives 1 or more Solar, you can reduce an Celestial down to 0 attack. It's basically like somewhat conditional removal is how I treat P-Gleam. You know, it's kind of like a weaker Boom Bat in a lot of ways. I guess it's not necessarily weaker because it can remove an Celestial without dying itself, but it does use its attack, which is like, you know, whatever. But it's also only a 1/2, so it's pretty hard to out. And finally, would you believe if we are playing Astrabbit, playset as our only non-solar Celestial in the deck. But Astrabbit is actually an ethereal, believe it or not. So it is actually searchable by the Exaltus there, which is wild. Yeah, actually it's not something that really comes up that often, because if you have Exaltus to search, you're not going to get Astrabbit to find more cards. You're probably just going to find whatever cards you need. But it is kind of funny that can potentially come up. Alright, that's going to do it for the Elestrals. For the runes, we are on 3 copies of Apollo. This is very, very integral to the Solar game plan. Basically, you can disenchant the Solar from Apollo to foretell the top 3 cards of your deck and add a Solar Celestial among them. Foretell is pretty much like Scry in Magic. You look at the top few cards and you can put them back on top in any order. Well, Scry lets you put them on bottom too, but this is only top, Foretell is. But Apollo is not just good for searching stuff, it's also very important as a Nexus bank for the Exaltus and the Dratora, right? So, speaking of Nexus banks, we are also playing 2 of the Stadium, Temple of the Sun. Very, very good for holding on to Spirits to Nexus 2, but you'll also notice that, like, a lot of our Lestrals have the 4 stat line, right? Like, especially 4 defense. So, being able to buff that up to 5 is actually very good. The Temple of the Sun also offers a lot of nice counterplay against Thunder, the Race to the Top decks, which are very, very popular and very good right now. So having that counterplay for Stadium decks in general is quite good. We're playing 1 Earthquake and then 2 Tsunami. These are going to be our only non-solar, non-Omni runes there. And finally, for the Omnis, we have pretty much all the stuff you would expect to see. We got Ambro, playset of that, as well as Resting on Your Laurels. Staples there. We are playing 2 copies of Altar of Stars because we do care a lot about Nexusing in this deck. And we are just like a Nexus deck in general, right? Like we have the Stadiums, we have the Divines, and we again have multiple solar cards that Nexus. So being able to have the Altars there, and of course the position changing effect is also highly relevant. And then from there, pretty typical stuff. 3 Gorgons, 3 Poison Tipped Arrow, 2 Shield of Achilles to round out the counter Omnis. So that's the main deck. Spirit deck is probably pretty self-explanatory. Actually, it's very self-explanatory. We have 2 Leviathans for the Tsunamis. You don't have to be playing 2 for just 2 water cards, right? Like, I've talked about this in the past, but you could definitely just play 1, but it's like, we have enough room in the Spirit deck, because a lot of our stuff is just going to be solar anyway. We have the 2 Teratlets for the Earthquake. 2 Zaptor for the Astrabbit. You could play a 3rd, and in a lot of decks I would play a 3rd to like re-enchant Astrabbit, but in this deck you don't need to do that as much because again you already have so much searching with the Apollo and with the Exaltus that the odds are that you're going to need to re-enchant the Astrabbit to keep finding more stuff is pretty low because again so much of our stuff is already searchable. So that's our 6 non-solar spirits, meaning the other 14 spirits are all going to be solars. So, but if you really wanted to, like I said, you could play a 3rd Zaptor, or you could only go down to 1 Leviathan. But that's going to do it for our spirit deck and the deck profile portion. Let's go ahead and take a look at these games now. Okay, so we are going into our game against Quesojama, who has been on that Ferrogeist Reanimator deck for quite some time, but for this game is actually going to be on 5s. So I think it's particularly a Thunder variant. if I recall correctly. So it'll be like one of those Race to the Top Thunder decks, but with more like generic good cards as opposed to Thunder cards. So leading off strong with the Astrabbit here. Queso obviously taking the first turn here. I was about to say, let's see what he ends up getting, but no, you don't get to see with Astrabbit. It's so, like, I think I've said this in videos before. I probably said it in this video because we already talked about Corvishine, but, you know, if Astrabbit, like, foretold, like, if you use the foretell mechanic, it'd actually be a lot more balanced. But it doesn't, so we don't get to see. Anyway, Queso's going to throw down a face down, as it were, and, it's probably going to be it before passing back over to moi, unless he's got another face down he wants to put down here. So yeah, I was a little worried about this matchup because Solar's bodies aren't quite as efficient as Fives. That is kind of one of the things about the deck that is a bit of a weakness, right? So, yeah, of course, the Fives deck is really, like, it's funny because it's been called a beatdown deck in the past, but it's really just more about, it's really more tempo. It's more about efficient bodies, right? So, alright, going for the Apollo here. Gonna activate and then throw 2 additional Solar down underneath them. Gonna use one of the activations here. This will foretell the top 3, and then of course allow me to add one of the Solar Electrals among them to the hand. So, Gorgon's Gaze, Campfell, Shield. We are going to end up adding the Campfell. Putting Gorgons and then Shield back on top, so... Yeah, I really like that Campfell, like I said, even if we're not on, like, the full Pharaohgeist line. You definitely don't need to be for Campfell to be good. It's already a pretty solid card in its own right, so... Alright, let's see what we end up playing here. It's going to be an Earthquake on the bunny. You know, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes committing the Earthquake turn 1 to destroying the Astrabbit, because you never know if they're going to have something else that they, you know, like a big Celestial you might want to, you know, hit later. That said, you know, when you're up against a deck like Fives, you know, a card like Earthquake, this is probably a fine case to use it. So, Corvishine, we get to foretell 2, draw 1, and then put a card from our hand on top of our deck. So I'm going to draw the Gorgon's Gaze here. Also, I should be, like, mixing my cards up, even if I don't intend on putting them back in a different order, at least giving the illusion that I might, you know, would be a little bit better here. But anyway, I'm going to set 1, swing with the Corvishine. That set's pretty obviously just going to be the Gorgon's Gaze, but... Yeah, Corvishine again being the, the balanced Astrabbit, in terms of both stats and effect, honestly. Alright. He's going into that Spirit deck for a water this time. Is it going to be Galaxy? I know it's going to be the Mustation. So this is more of like the quote-unquote wet Fives deck. Although I do think... I'm pretty sure there is a Race to the Top package in this as well, so... Alright, so we're going to Gorgon's the Mustation here. I believe I did that in response to the effect. I actually don't know if I saw the water get expended, but maybe I did that at a weird time or something. I don't know. Alright, so drawing for turn, we're going to use the Apollo once again, foretelling the top 3 and grabbing a Solar Celestial among them. This time we're going to get Lumaru, the other 2 cards being Shield and Campfell. I'm going to put them back in that order. Again, I should be at least giving the illusion that I might be mixing them up to my opponent, but it's also friendlies, so I don't really care that much. So here I'm at an interesting decision point, because I know if I normal cast an Celestial, the Mustation can just switch to 6 attack, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to re-enchant the Corvishine with another Solar. This actually lets me do 3 different things. One, as I just mentioned, it lets me not proc the Mustation effect, that way it stays a 1/6. 2, it lets me do the Corvishine effect again for even 1 more foretell, as you saw here. And 3, now when I battle the Corvishine over the Mustation, I actually am going to deal a point of spirit damage. And we even also have the Temple of the Sun here, which is a 4th good reason to have given the Corvishine an extra Solar Spirit, as that will give it an extra +1/+1. The Corvishine now being a 4/6, so... Yeah, gonna get hit with that Tsunami here. So no battling over the Mustation here, but again, the Corvishine has 6 defense, so, you know, even if, even if Queso does activate that effect to switch the stats, he still cannot run over the Corvishine here, which is really nice. Okay, so here's Galaxy. So no need to expend to swap Mustation. That'll just be permanently swapped now. And let's see what else he's got, if anything. Yeah, Corvishine's still too big of a butt for either of these water bodies to be able to run over here. And I got those back rows as well. One of them is Shield. We know pretty much for a fact that one of them is going to be Shield of Achilles. Okay, drawing for a turn. Yeah, so still in a little bit of an interesting spot here with the Corvishine and just the general board state, right? Because, well, now, again, with the Galaxy out, the Mustation is just always going to be a 6-1. So I don't have to play around necessarily not normal casting here. Yeah, we're going to go for the Lumaru. But that is going to get hit with the PTA. Rather unfortunate, as of course without the PTA it would have been a 6-2 and able to contend, actually battle over the Galaxy. Well, yeah, contend with it, but no, now it is a 4-2. Again, factoring in that Temple of the Sun buff there. I'm kind of debating if I want to use the Appaloosa. I called him Appaloosa there. Apollo. Debating if I want to use the third Apollo activation because, of course, that will end up sending it to the yard. I might need that to Nexus. So here I'm going to do a pretty, at least in my experience, rare Gorgon's Gaze on my turn. I'm doing it on the Galaxy, which will revert everything back to its normal stats here. So after that, we're going to Ambro to get some of these spirits back. Decided not to use the Apollo here, because I think I already know what most of the top cards in my deck are anyway, so wasn't really too worried about it. Battling over the two things here, and then paying out the PTA. Looks like we forgot the Lumaru Mill 3. I need to get better about that. Of course, I'm not as experienced in Elestrals as I am in Yu-Gi-Oh!, so it's easier to forget certain effects, but you know, while that may be the reason, it's not an excuse, you know. Definitely got to get better about noticing effects like that. Another Mustation coming down here. And that is going to be fine with me. Thanks to the foretelling mechanic, of course, revealing the top cards of the deck. Queso pretty much knows that I have a Shield of Achilles down here. And, you know, sometimes that info to give your opponent really isn't that great. Because it lets them play around certain stuff. But then, sometimes the opposite can happen, which is actually the situation here, where Queso has to make some really hard plays, knowing that I have the Shield of Achilles, right? And, you know, that kind of information can be detrimental in a situation like this, as far as, like, you know, making decisions goes. That good old psychological warfare. Yeah, I think he's, like, expressing right now that he's like, I don't know what to do, because I know if I attack, I'm just going to get hit with the shield. But, you know, from what I remember, he made a pretty good point here, and this is very true of not just Elestrals, but, like, any card game, especially Yu-Gi-Oh!, right? If you're trying to play around, like, a back row, like a face down, or a counter spell, or something like that, and you know your opponent has it, then a lot of the time, it can just be better to force it out, right? Because, like, if you try to play around it by not playing into it at all, you know, you're not really solving the problem, right? You're just, yeah, he's expending for the Mustation effect and going into swing here. You're not really solving the problem, right? Because the thing that you're playing around or, you know, don't want to get hit by is not going away. So sometimes you really just got to, like, commit to playing into the removal just to get it out of the way, just to be able to do something on the next turn, right? So yeah, so of course we are going to shield that Mustation. Going to use my last Apollo activation here. It seems like I'm pretty ahead as far as, like, board state goes. Whiff on the Apollo, unfortunately, but debating if I want to put these back in a different order here. Yeah, no, like I said, I'm ahead on board state, so I don't mind giving up my last Apollo activation in a situation like this. Playing the Campfell, we get to swing with the Campfell and the Corvishine for a total of 3. And again, that Campfell, almost pretty much no matter what happens to it, will end up getting me some spirits back for that nice little refund effect there, so that'll be nice. Alright, Queso's going to lead off with an Ambro here. Spending a water to put some stuff back. As we take a look at our yard, putting back some waters there, looks like. Alright, let's see what play ends up following that. Using a water for the Mestacian, of course. Yeah, of course, because we shielded that, naturally. So Mestacian F, switching to 6. Battling over the Corvishine. Corvishine put in a lot of work, honestly. Between both the foretelling and just the swinging. Temple doing a lot here as well. I mean, that's the nice thing about Temple, right? Not only is it a Nexus bank, but the stat buff, I mean, it really is significant, so. Here I'm going to expend a draw. I think I might actually have an Celestial in my hand, but again, I'm in a situation where if I normal cast, then the Mestacian can just swap its stats, so I'd rather not play an Celestial here and then just battle and then pass after that. So, Thunder, is this going to be the Jolton? This is a Jolton, I was going to say. Yeah, I knew at some point, you know, Mount Olympus stuff started coming up here, so that looks like this is where that comes into play. Debating if I want to respond to the Jolton. I am going to PTA, but the effect will end up going through here. Unfortunately, the Mount Olympus does threaten the Temple of the Sun, but, you know, this Temple has already put in so much work this game. Even if we didn't, like, Nexus off of it, it was still quite good. You know what? Actually, I should have paid off the Temple for the PTA. That might actually be what I'm talking about right here as I'm... Well, no, I'm pointing at Campfell. I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't think I mentioned that during this game. I'm thinking about that just now, but I definitely... Whoops. A little bit of a technical error there. But yeah, no, I definitely should have paid off the Temple. Because if the Jolton's going to resolve and Mount Olympus is coming down anyway, the Temple's going to get destroyed, right? So... Basically could have cast that PTA for a total of 1 instead of 2 if I end up paying it out. Which I will here. Yeah, I think there might be some slight technical issues happening at this point in the game. But we're about to wrap up here. We're coming up towards the end. I mean, you can see on the timeline too. I was about to talk about how, like, oh, I can see it on the timeline because I'm watching in the editor, as if that was a totally unique thing. So, oh, I know what it was. I know why we paused, and I know, yeah. It's because we were looking to see if you could misenchant stadiums. I'm pretty sure you can. You can just cast a stadium, you know, with the wrong spirit type. Of course, it won't get the effect, but, I think I was thinking about using an altar here. Altar of Stars. But I ultimately, pretty sure I decided not to. Anyway. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure you can misenchant stadiums. Yeah, during this game, I briefly looked it up and I saw people talking about doing it. Like, enough people where I was like, okay, this must be a thing that you can do. Yeah, ultimately deciding not to chain to the Mount Olympus activation with Altar of Stars. I don't even know if I would be able to spend... Well, yeah, I would, because the Mount Olympus is in limbo, right, at that point? And then I can pay off because it hasn't resolved yet. I can still pay off the Temple, which should still be in play. I think that's how that works. Yeah, I'm not quite at the point yet where I'm as confident in my Alestral's, rulings knowledge. Yeah, so here I'm actually going to ascend my Campfell into another Campfell. Not something that comes up a lot, but occasionally ascending a 1-spirit into another 1-spirit does come up. And here, you get the spirits back from Campfell if you do ascend, right? So, even with a PTA, I can still swing in for 2 spirits. And as that's paid out, that'll be a total of 3 damage, which is pretty nice. Yeah, there are definitely some decks, some matchups, some situations where that does end up coming up. Ascending something into a 1-spirit. You could even ascend a 3-spirit into a 1-spirit if you really wanted to. You can ascend anything into anything. Alright, Eddie gonna hit me for 1. But that was Queso's last spirit there, so we're gonna expend a draw, set, and then pass back over. We just need to find something that can hit over this Eddie, and then we are good to go here. But as it stands, I'll take another 1 from the Eddie here. And there is the Lumaru. There we go. So, Lumaru is able to battle over Eddie. Here I remembered the Mill 3. I didn't that last time, but I was like, oh yeah, wait, no, you do Mill 3. Because it actually did matter if Ambro, was one of those 3. Or if it was the 4th card. But it wasn't, so it was the race to the top. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you've been enjoying these deck profiles. I've been having a blast making them, so hopefully you have been liking watching them. But that'll do it for this one. This is XLEX signing out, hoping you have a fantastic day.